there has been clearly a lack of weapons coming from the West that belong to this category of not direct offensive weapons that you use to wound or kill enemy soldiers, but to breach through fortifications. So various types of special engineering tanks that are really used just to demine those first areas, various types of bridges that these tank bridges, so to say, that you can cross water obstacles. There could have been also various types of amphibious vehicles or boats, at least to threaten the Russians a little bit with some kind of crossing over the Dnipro River in sections where the Russians haven't built these defensive lines and fortifications. So there is definitely still a lot of work that remains to be done.
Yes, because when we look in the British context, particularly Ukrainian context, because Ben Wallace, the Secretary of State for Defence, who is himself a former soldier, is standing down from the government probably in September when the next reshuffle comes, and indeed will not seek re-election to Parliament thereafter. So it's a question of who replaces him and whether that person is equally as enthusiastic.
That is quite a worrying development.
It is, and I'm not sure what the answer to that is. And this is, again, all these things have been very Boris Johnson, as you say, although interesting enough, it seems to be forgotten that when he was Foreign Secretary under Theresa May as Prime Minister, he was rather less keen on Ukraine being given advanced weaponry, but he seems to have come around since then. And certainly he was very keen when he was Prime Minister. But it's this personal, without particular individuals pushing things forward, nothing gets done. I mean, one of the reasons he's going, one of his frustrations, of course, that he wasn't chosen to be NATO Secretary General.
A very interesting development as well, because at least according to some of the press statements, rather, Western press, which normally has a very good reputation, some of those outlets reported that they had sources telling them from the US State Department that it was mainly President Biden who opposed his candidature.
Yes, which of course we always tell this with his great ally, and unfortunately, I forget who it was.
And that he preferred Ursula von der Leyen instead.
Well, yes, and which will be an answer to Mr. Putin's prayers, because Ursula von der Leyen, as German defense minister, was completely and utterly useless. And really, and this is part of the problem. But the more serious, and the other I read, it was suggested that Mrs. Biden wanted it to be a woman next time. But it's exactly this sort of thing where you make decisions not on the basis of military need, but to some sort of social engineering or some other point, which gave, in my view, the impetus to Putin in the first place, thinking the West was too decadent, too stupid, couldn't be bothered to send an angry tweet.
And creating this situation in which we don't have enough artillery shells and other weapons that are
so
needed.
where the decision to be, I know these things are always slightly political, but where the decision to choose the next NATO Secretary General is based on the whim of the President or the President's wife, as it seems to be, or Macron, the French, as usual, being, saying it should be somebody from the European Union. The European Union and NATO are wholly separate things.
Absolutely. Then there were also speculations with Biden often stressing his Irish background, that there is a certain animosity from President Biden when it comes to...
Well, he's about as Irish as he is English, historically. So, but again, I mean, this is the point of the problem. And this is... You're facing an enemy for whom these sort of considerations are completely irrelevant, and a particularly bloodthirsty enemy, as it seems at this point. And so to be seen publicly to be making decisions not on the basis of military or other need, but to satisfy some political, in the wider sense, some politically correct, semi-woke agenda is actually quite disappointing. No wonder Wallace thought he'd had enough and would step down completely.
It does show that we still need strategic reawakening in the West, that we are still not prioritizing the right things. There was a certain awakening that came in connection with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but I believe that it hasn't really been driven fully home just yet.
No, it was very heartening, as you and I have discussed before, I think, that initially the response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine was very positive. It did bring people together and folk did take it seriously. I had feared it would be treated in much the way the 2014 attack on or invasion of Crimea had been treated, with sort of some angry tweets, some usual sort of nice phrases, but not much else. And fortunately, so far, it does seem to have brought people together. And it did trigger this most remarkable feat of bringing Finland and Sweden into, well, Finland's already there, Sweden presumably soon, into NATO, when they have had years and years and years of declared neutrality. So that actually is very heartening in terms of displaying unity.
Absolutely. So we just need to hope that this initial spark that came in 2022, that it will not disappear over time. This needs to be maintained, and people need to keep reminding both the general public, but also those people that have been elected to office, that this is an extremely important issue that cannot be shuffled back into some corner, and that, because there's always the news cycle that something new happens and energy is directed in a new direction. But a war on this scale in Europe simply cannot be ignored.
No, it can't. And anyway, thank you very much, Adam, for sharing your wisdom with us. Well, there we have it. History, as we often say, is living history. It's certainly living just across the border from where we're recording this, in Ukraine. We'll be keeping abreast of developments, and we'll share it with you. I'm always trying to put it, of course, into a historical context. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History.